Jacob's life was marked by struggles. This Torah portion is no exception. It begins after Jacob's hostile encounter with his father-in-law Laban. It includes the account of Jacob returning to the land that was promised to him as an inheritance. As he is approaching the end of the journey, he is met by angels who join him in his camp on the Jabbok River, east of the Jordan River, east of Shechem. He sends out gifts to Esau, hoping to resolve his lifelong struggle with Esau. As he is at the gates of the promised land, he struggles with the angel of the Lord, who gives him a new name. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is Words from Our Father. Jacob had spent 21 years away from the land that God told him that he would give to him and his descendants. When he left the land, Jacob saw a vision of angels ascending and descending on a ladder anchored on earth below and the heaven above. Jacob declared that God was in that place and called it Bethel, which means the house of God. Now, just before Jacob is ready to cross over the Jordan River and return to the land, angels come out to meet him. Genesis 32, 1 and 2. So Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp," and he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Just like Jacob named the place where God spoke to him in the land as the house of God, he called the place where he camped God's camp, and named it Mahanaim, which means two camps. The Stone Edition Humash relates Ramban's understanding of the two camps. Ramban suggests that the plural refers to Jacob's camp on earth and the camp of angels on high. If angels were with Jacob when he left the land, and then again when he entered the land, were angels with him while he was out of the land? God had told Jacob that he would be with him wherever he went until God accomplished all that he had promised. Genesis 28:15. "Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you." The word translated as keep is the Hebrew word shamar, number 8104 in Strong's Concordance, meaning to hedge about, to protect or guard. God said that he would guard Jacob wherever he went and bring him back to the land. This implies that the angels Jacob saw ascending and descending on the ladder, or ones like them, went with Jacob into Haran. The Jewish sage Rashi saw the appearance of the angels at Mahanaim as the changing of the guard. They came to meet him to accompany Jacob to the Holy Land, replacing the angels that had been with him outside the land. This reversed the changing of the angelic guard that took place when he left Eretz Yisrael to go to Haran. This emphasizes that God was with Jacob in all of his travels. Most recently, he had protected Jacob from Laban's murderous intentions when Jacob fled Padan Aram with his wives, children, and livestock. As Jacob is poised to enter the promised land, he is faced with another threat. Jacob's brother Esau was apparently still angry at Jacob and intent on killing him. When Jacob left the land, partly to avoid Esau's anger, his mother told Jacob she would send for him when Esau's anger cooled. Rebekah never sent for Jacob, so it seems that Esau's anger against his brother never abated. Before entering the land, Jacob reached out to Esau to see what he could do to appease Esau. He sent messengers to Esau in the land of Edom, which was several days' journey to the south of Jacob's camp. Genesis 32, 3-5. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, "Speak thus to my lord Esau. Thus your servant Jacob says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight." The messengers returned with word that Esau was coming to meet him with 400 men. Esau had prospered mightily in the years that Jacob had been in Haran, commanding a large force of men. Not surprisingly, this frightened Jacob. He had 4 women, 11 children, and the servants who came with him from Haran. Compared to Esau, Jacob was helpless. Jacob takes 3 steps to protect himself and his family from Esau. Jacob, who was camped among both earthly and heavenly inhabitants, now divides his earthly company into two parts, just in case. Genesis 32, 7 and 8. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels, into two companies. And he said, if Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the other company which is left will escape. Next, Jacob calls out to God for protection based on the promises he had made to Jacob to keep him and bring him back to the land. Genesis 32, 11 and 12. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the mother with the children. For you said, I will surely treat you well and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. Finally, Jacob sent a series of gifts from his flock and herd to Esau. As his messengers were on their way with gifts for Esau, Jacob sent his family across the Jabbok River for protection and stayed behind in the camp. Remember, this is the camp that included the angels of God. One of these angels, described as a man, just like the angels who visited Abraham, wrestled with Jacob throughout the night. Genesis 32, 24 and 25. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Who was this man or angel that Jacob wrestled with? At root, Jacob's struggles were with Esau. So Rashi understands this angel to be the guardian angel of Esau. Through this struggle, Jacob prevailed over Esau because of his spiritual superiority and attained the blessing. However, the plain meaning of the text states that Jacob recognized the angel as being the angel of the Lord. Jacob declares that he had seen the face of God. Genesis 32:30. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. The angel states the reason that Jacob's name is changed to Israel is because Jacob struggled not only with Esau, but with God. So it seems that the better understanding of the man Jacob wrestled with was the angel of the Lord. Even though Jacob's hip was injured while they were wrestling, Jacob refused to let go of the angel. It seems that all of Jacob's struggles throughout his life and even in the womb culminated in this final struggle. He wanted to know that he had God's blessing. Genesis 32:26 through 28. And he said, send me away, for the dawn has risen. And he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name no longer shall be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have persevered with God and with men and have been able. From his conception, Jacob had struggled to attain the promise God had given to Abraham. At birth, even as Esau gained the right of the blessing as the firstborn, Jacob didn't give up. He grasped Esau's heel, and from that action he was given the name Jacob, which means heel. The Jewish sage Rashi comments that Jacob was conceived first, and thus was justified in his efforts to be the firstborn. The Stone Edition Humash expands on Rashi's comment. Pachad Yitzhak expounds on this seemingly strange comment. Briefly, he explains that the contention between Jacob and Esau was over who would assume the spiritual mission of Abraham and Isaac. Thus, the critical factor in their birth was the seed of the patriarch that had been implanted in the mother's egg, for it contained the essence of the father. Consequently, since Jacob was conceived first, he was the spiritual firstborn and therefore entitled to the blessings. Jacob's entire life was marked by this struggle to attain the spiritual mission and firstborn status, which Esau was entitled to as the firstborn, but which he despised. By asking for his name, the angel refers to Jacob's efforts to attain the right of the firstborn. Although Jacob had legitimately purchased the birthright from Esau, he tricked his father Isaac into giving him the blessing rather than seeing it go to Esau or waiting to see how God would resolve the issue. Jacob declared that he would continue to hold on to the angel until his right to the spiritual mission of Abraham was confirmed. First Fruits of Zion in Unrolling the Scroll states that the Hebrew phrase, "unless you bless me," is actually in the past tense. In other words, Jacob says to the angel of the Lord, "I will not let you go unless you have already blessed me." Jacob did not want to continue with the stigma of having stolen his brother's blessing. He wanted to know that it was God who had blessed. He wanted to know that the blessing legitimately belonged to him. The blessing that the angel speaks over Jacob is that his name has been changed from Jacob to Israel. The name Israel, number 3478, is from two root words and is defined in various ways. The first root word is Sarah, number 8280, meaning to prevail or have power as a prince. The word persevered in the J.P. Green translation of verse 28 read earlier is the word Sarah. Other versions of the Bible translate this use of Sarah as struggled, had power, have striven, or like a prince you have power. The second root word of the name Israel is El, number 410, meaning strength, mighty, the Almighty, God, or power. The word El is the accepted shortened form of God's name Elohim. As you can see, there are many ways that these two words can be combined to form the meaning of the name Israel. Strong's lexicon defines it as, "He will rule with God." The Brown Driver Briggs lexicon defines it as, "God prevails," while Hitchcock's Bible Names Dictionary defines it as, "Who prevails with God." Smith's Bible Dictionary defines Israel as the prince that prevails with God, using both meanings of Sarah. As a transformative name going from Jacob to Israel, it marks Jacob's triumphant achievement. He struggled and persevered until he received the promise and the blessing originally given to Abraham and passed on to him through Isaac. Throughout his struggle, the angels of God were with him. The author of Hebrews tells us to persevere in our faith so that we will receive the promise. Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Paul tells his readers in Ephesians that we, like Jacob, need to prevail with power because our battle is not really against flesh and blood, it's against spiritual forces. Ephesians 6:10-12. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Paul tells us to put on the full armor of God as we battle against these spiritual forces. This includes the presence of God's protection through his Holy Spirit. Finally, James, the brother of Yeshua, tells us to persevere against trials of many sorts, because those who do will attain the crown of life. James 1:12. Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. After wrestling with the angel of the Lord, Jacob's meeting with Esau the next morning went over without a problem. Esau greeted Jacob with tears and with a kiss. Although the kiss may have been insincere, Esau did not attack Jacob with his 400 men. Instead, Esau invites Jacob to stay with him in Edom. However, Edom is not Jacob's destination. Jacob is headed for the promised land. He has one more stop before arriving in the land. This stop is at a place he called Sukkot. Genesis 33:17. And Jacob journeyed to Sukkot, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Sukkot. Why is this stop even mentioned in the Bible? Jacob stopped at many places as he traveled from Haran to the Promised Land and probably built booths or temporary shelters at many of them along the way. The livestock that Jacob sheltered in the booths were the wages of his years working for Laban. They and his family represent over 20 years of work. The name Sukkot is also given to the booths that the children of Israel are to build during the Feast of Sukkot in memorial that God was with the children of Israel in the wilderness. This first use of the word Sukkot for the shelters that Jacob built foreshadows these later shelters and ultimately points to a time when God will bring back his people. God's people were bought with the death and resurrection of his son Yeshua. They represent over 2,000 years of work. When God brings his people into the promised land, he covers each dwelling place with a sukkah or booth. Isaiah 4:4-6. When the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purged the blood of Jerusalem from her midst by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning, then the Lord will create above every dwelling place of Mount Zion and above her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For over all the glory there will be a covering, and there will be a tabernacle, a sukkah, for shade in the daytime from the heat, for a place of refuge, and for a shelter from storm and rain. After his stay at Sukkot, Jacob proceeded across the Jordan, traveled up the mountains of Israel, and settled for a time in Shechem, the first place that Abraham stopped at when he entered the land. However, this was not where Jacob had been instructed to go. He was told to continue on south to the place where God had first appeared to him. Genesis 35:1. Then God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau, your brother." Jacob may have built Sukkot for his livestock, but he had not yet purged the idols from his household. Isaiah says that the cleansing and purging of Jerusalem must happen before God creates a sukkah over every dwelling place in Jerusalem. Jacob finally purged the idols from his household as they left Shechem and started out for Bethel. Genesis 35:2-3. And Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Put away the foreign gods that are among you. Purify yourselves and change your garments. Then let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress and has been with me in the way which I have gone." When Jacob and his family arrived at Bethel, Jacob built the altar that he had promised to build to God. As far as fulfilling his vow to give a tenth of all God blessed him with, the Jewish sage Rashi called the tribute sent to Esau Jacob's tithe. Jacob is finally back where he started at Bethel, where God appeared to him. God reiterated that Jacob's name would now be Israel. Further, he would receive the promise given to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations and that the land would be his inheritance and the inheritance of his descendants. Genesis 35:9-12. Then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob any more, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel. Also God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac I give to you, and to your descendants after you I give this land." Jacob's life is an account of a man who struggled throughout his life to attain the promise of being a forefather of the Messiah. His life was a series of ups and downs, good decisions and not so good decisions. He lived with an adversarial relationship with his brother. He endured exile and a dishonest boss and father-in-law. Ultimately, he held on to God and attained the promise. Paul tells us to hold on in spite of our trials to attain the eternal blessing. 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. Therefore we do not lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. At the end of Jacob's life, he was once more called to leave the land of his inheritance. As Jacob prepared to leave the land, God appeared to him again and assured him that he would be with Jacob wherever he went, and that Jacob would return to the promised land. Jacob believed God, and through him all nations of the earth would be blessed. I'm Brenda Cathcart for Moed Ministries International. Shalom and be blessed.